Welcome to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. I'm Aaron Robbins with Intrinsic First. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Be sure to stick around to the end for some debatably funny jokes that will hopefully leave you with a smile. And don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes. We're here to support you, and we'd love to hear from you. So drop us a comment below or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. Ready to dive into the world of leadership? Let's get started. All right. Well, welcome to the podcast.
It's a riot.
No, we won't.
Well, that's fun. That's great music.
It's a good intro.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
It really is. All right. Well, welcome to the Intrinsic First podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the one-to-one context. And I think we'll start out with refreshing a little bit on the definition of leader or leadership, and then we'll jump into one-to-one.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. So I believe all three of us are committed to the idea that leadership is not a thing. It's a set of behaviors. And that when you start to think about how you develop leaders, the fundamental issue is how to make or help others have several different behaviors they could use in a given situation. And so the context itself, this one-to-one, has to do with the opportunity any manager may have to influence a single direct report. And that opportunity is relatively simple, so to speak. Not to say that we aren't complex individuals, but the idea that it's a relatively simple set of behaviors compared to if you were managing a team. One-to-one context really is an opportunity to singly have in-depth conversations with people about their outcomes or about their goals, about the things you want them, or they both, you and they, want to accomplish in a given performance period. And so we're going to define leadership in this case is mostly the development of a given individual. What's the main purpose of leadership? And we have been hinting at it with other podcasts, but it's the development of someone's skills and commitment, competence and commitment to do what the company needs, or what the job requires, or what the customer needs, whatever. We're going to be talking about leadership as a set of directive behaviors or supportive behaviors. Okay, and those can be used differently depending upon the conditions or the situation you find yourself in with the direct report. So why don't we just jump into that by talking first about what are some of, we call them phases of performance. In other words, people go through phases of performance. They either sometimes want to do something or can't do them. They're not skillful enough, or they're somehow not committed to do them. They don't either. And the commitment can be a product of someone's confidence or somebody's
skill,
which is in that case competence. Yeah. So we're going to use competence and commitment, right, or we're going to use as two qualitatively different dimensions of managing in a one-to-one context.
Right.
Just so I'm clear, so like we're setting the stage for the one-to-one conversation. So as a supervisor, I need to be able to quickly assess or understand where that direct report that I'm about to talk to is competence-wise and commitment-wise. So those are two things I need to consider before, and that'll make sure I've got this right. That'll help me understand how to approach the conversation, whether I need to use more directive behaviors or more supportive behaviors.
Exactly.
Or do we want to say focused and inspiring?
Well, that might be even a better word when you talk about teams.
Yeah. Well, I'm going off
Yes.
of the genius versus
Well,
SL2 terminology.
Sure. There are some words that are common or similar or similes for. So focusing could be goal setting or directing.
Mm-hmm.
So and you said focusing and inspiring, and inspiring could be the same synonym for
Supportive. Right.
Yeah. When we wrote this book, we were really trying to get certain words associated with certain contexts.
Right.
So focusing and inspiring could be a much better word for teams or organizations.
Yeah, that makes.
And direction and support might be much better for, but that doesn't mean it has to be.
Yeah. No, I like that though. That's good.
Yeah. So what we're trying to get people to realize is that no matter they have, surprisingly, direction has the same function as focusing, just in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Directing, I don't know about you guys, but sounds more like not a lot of choice on the part of the direct report, not a lot of consideration for the direct report's feelings, and much more concerned with here's what we need to do, you need to do, I need to do to help you do that, and I want it done specifically this way. So what part of no did you not understand? No, I didn't mean it that way. But that is in some ways...
Well, it's very directive, though.
It is very directive, yes. Put the candle back.
Yeah. I remember one of the stories I think you use when you're talking about the phases of performance was when you did the coast-to-coast bike ride.
Oh, yes.
Which was pretty impressive.
Oh, yes.
Rode a bike from California to New York?
No, we went, we dipped the front ends, the back end of the bike wheels in the Puget Sound, and we wound up in...
Washington.
Yep, we started at Washington, but we came up and then down south through Idaho, across over to Wyoming and Colorado, and then South Dakota. South Dakota was an amazing...
without stopping, without sleeping.
Oh, no.
No, but I think it was like 8 hours a day.
No, it was 80 miles a day.
Yeah, that's a lot.
80 miles a day. So your tuchus was a little sore.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
But then where did you end up in? Was it in...
We wound up in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they had to ride all the way back, right? No?
I put that bike on a plane and I sat down in a nice,
In a chair.
cool, and people served me martinis. No, I'm only kidding. But I was really surprised at how quickly it went. It was 46 days.
Yeah.
And it was we're 4,000 miles.
That's awesome. So how do we get to that story?
Right. So from the perspective of phases of performance, when you first start something like that, and I don't want to tell the story for you, but what I remember of it was just in the beginning, it was just that excitement of we're going to do this, and it doesn't matter how hard it's going to get, we're going to do it, and I'm excited about it. And here we go, and we're gonna be able to get through any. We know it's gonna be hard, but no worries, we'll get through that. And then you get your bike and you get fitted for your clip-on shoes, and you get in the bike and you clip your feet in, and you fall over. Right? And then all of a sudden you start realizing, whoa, I knew it was going to be hard, but the reality of the hardness maybe be a little more discouraging than I thought.
Well, we could be talking about this issue in relation to me as the performer. But really in the one-to-one context, we are talking about leader behaviors that directly affect someone else, what's at your disposal.
True. So then it would be, well, what kind of behaviors would the bike coach or the cycling coach need to provide you when you're first starting off?
Knowing that you're going to be super excited, but not
you're
have a lot
super
of
excited, but
confidence.
you have no idea what you're about to do.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
And
That's where directive comes in, and the low competence or
assuming that you've never done it before. Now, so that builds into the context. Let's talk about that. That's the phases of performance that a direct report may go through. But I'm going to use myself in this situation. As I said, it was 4,000 miles, and the longest, and 80 miles a day, the longest trip I had taken on a bike was 63 miles. And that was in ideal settings, not out on the streets of Laredo, no, not out on the streets of the back roads of the United States. And not all roads are created equal. And then, of course, we had 4 mountain passes over 10,000 feet. So we were climbing, the third day out of Washington, we were climbing over 10,000 feet. And it was, your butt, by the way, was beginning to rebel. And they weren't just not rebelling, they were
what did your
screaming.
one butt cheek say to the other butt
Don't go there. Ooh.
Get me off this bike.
I didn't sign up for this.
Yes, his butt with cheeks. 2 words or one?
Oh, they came together, you spread them apart.
Yeah, that you have to split them apart. Yeah. Oops. So anyway,
That's a clean joke.
talking about the idea, what I'm really trying to say is that most direct reports, most human beings go through a series of predictable stages, or what we call cycles or phases, that are going to happen most of the time for everybody. In fact, I often think about that. You just for the moment, let's just take a situation where the newlyweds have just been married. And man,
the honeymoon period.
Yes, the honeymoon period is the greatest thing since sliced bread. You're there, and what? Oh, well, okay, we can overcome that. Yeah.
Right. That's really annoying when you do that, but I'm cool.
Yeah.
I can tolerate it. I'm going to put up
You're
with that.
You're going to do that.
2 months later, I can't handle that anymore. Stop it.
Or you do something and they want you to keep doing it.
Well, that's true.
Or they don't want you to do it.
No, I'm saying they want, you used to write me
That's
letters.
cool. I don't like doing that, but I can keep it going. 2 months
used to
later,
always send
I'm
me-
not writing you another letter.
That's right.
If you don't, we won't communicate. But coming back, so those phases of performance, what we call them cycles or phases of performance, are predictable, and that's one of the things that you have to take into consideration. What phase is this direct report in? Now, it's predicated on, do they want to do it, or can they do it? So it's basically ability or commitment.
Or energy.
Yeah. And so being able to do something is a very different question than being not wanting to do it, being in a position where your energy is low for it.
And those phases of performance are defined essentially by whether you're high, low, in one or both of those.
That's right. And so what happens is that it's the manager's responsibility to try to get a sense of it. What phase is this person in? And technically speaking, if you get a rookie and put out there, which I absolutely love, that's the person who really doesn't know what they're doing, and so they're incompetent, but they're enthusiastic about it. The enthusiastic and competent is really a very different person to manage than if you had somebody who was both competent and committed to do what you want to do.
Ignorance is bliss, right?
Yeah, well, you got it. So the first phase, we believe, is the one which is the enthusiastic and competent, So if you, I was an enthusiastic and competent when I got on that bike, put our first got pedals and tires into the Washington Puget Sound and rode off into the eastern sunset, eastern sun, and it didn't take really too much longer. Maybe as soon as my blisters started to build, and I was really I didn't know how to climb 20 because there's a skill in pedaling uphill, and you got to do it. So what we needed basically was somebody who was going to understand that I need as much information about how I'm supposed to do this, when I'm supposed to do it, where I'm supposed to do it, and check to see that I'm doing it or not. So I think about focusing behaviors as goal setting, showing and telling how, monitoring performance, being right there beside them, being really clear about how much time I should be spending if we talked about a job. And so there's some obviously monitoring behavior that's necessary. And you don't have to do that by badgering them. You just have to sit there and say, well, have you thought about this? Or better yet, if you're going to go up this hill, well, and you're going to climb this, and this grade is going to be, and we had some brutal grades, some absolutely huge brutal grades. It's going to be tough. So it's okay to get off the bike, or don't get off the bike. Go down to your lowest gear, and a lot of guys were riding bikes that had 29 gears. I mean, some of them did, the really good ones. And in these groups that we were riding with, we had people who were really novices, and people who were veteran racers that had been in national competition. So we had to sort of condition people to try to not keep up with somebody who you really don't have the skills to do so. Your business is to keep pedaling up the hill, not pedal as fast as you can, because it's just not going to work. So blisters begin to create. You found people taking a sag wagon. Now a sag wagon is a
ride, right?
It's a ride. Right? I was going to say it's beautiful. These beautiful sedan. They're not sedans. They're
SUVs.
SUVs, and they were there to say, if I raised my hand, and they'd pick up the bike, pick me up, and they would take me to a rest stop, or they might take me to the lunch where I was going to be served. Whole bunches of ways, and we had what they call every flipping inch. Every one. I want to pedal.
Yeah. Don't want to use the sag wagon. I got to do every mile, every foot, every inch.
So now, why is that important? Because if you say that in your D1 or in phase one, it's not going to be good to try to bust your chops going up that hill. So the first 10,000 flag mountain we hit, I took the sag wagon for about 4 hours. But neither here nor there. I'm glad I had people who
cheater.
The guy's haven't done it yet. He's on his Peloton.
I don't want you to manage me.
I wouldn't do that.
No.
Anyways, no, not to say I wouldn't. I wouldn't even do that. That's a long way to go.
Yeah, so if you have somebody in that phase one where they've got like lots of, they're committed, they got high energy, but they don't know what they're doing. Yeah. I mean, there's do's and don'ts as a manager, how you treat them, right?
Yes, there is.
I mean, you said to be more directive when they're at phase one, but if you were to go and be more supportive, then there's some detriments to that.
Well, let's just talk. What do I need if I don't know what I'm doing?
You need to learn how to do it.
I need structure.
You need structure.
I need structure. Yeah. And so I shouldn't be all bent out of shape if my boss says to me, Drea, here's how I want you to do it. I've noticed that you're doing this, and this. No, I want you to put your pedals, and here's the gear I want you to be in when you go up this hill. And I expect your revolutions to be about this. And if any time you want to stop, just tell me, and we'll stop for a little bit. But the point I'm making is please do it the way I'm asking you to do it, and I'm not going to be apologetic by asking you over a period of time to continue to do that in a certain way. Now you can ask all your questions if you want, if you're feeling like you don't quite have it yet, and because pedaling uphill has its own rhythm and its own problems, and oftentimes people get impatient with their own lack of progress.
Right.
So I might say, you're getting a little impatient. Sounds to me like, but slow down. We're going to do this again.
So there's something really critical, I think, for me is like receiving or giving that instruction or that feedback is not judgmental, because I think that's super important for a leader to understand.
It's not connected to any fault or anybody else.
It's not personalized. Right?
It's not personalized.
No. So I think that's important, because I think that's where a lot of leaders or supervisors trip up, is they, in giving that feedback, they make it personalized. And then the person feels judged, and that goes south from there. So
I agree with you, and that's, I think, a whole topic on feedback that we're going to talk about. But I think what you're also getting into is the alignment conversations, the things that have to happen in order to be able to be successful providing directive support. You have to be aligned. They have to agree that they're in low competence.
Yes, they have.
That's a great point. It's great.
Because if you don't know what you're doing, but you think you do, and someone's going to try to give you direction, you're not going to want it.
That's a really good point.
It's a starting point, really, when you're given directive support, I think, is you have that alignment of, and it could be very quick. It could be, hey, do we agree that this is the first time you've ever done this, and you would like some support? Other times it may take some convincing, or even having them, go ahead and try it. Let's see how it goes, and let me know when you're ready for.
So let's stay with that, because that's beautiful, and it leads into the issues of how do you know how much direction to get or give. And I'm really clear here that if you don't know what you're doing and the stakes are high and the timelines are short, I'm going to be very, very close. I'm going to manage you very, very closely. If I've got a biker in there coming down the grade, there's a technique to braking.
You got to make sure you don't hurt yourself.
Absolutely, right. And I'm not going to be just saying, "Oh, just take your fingers, take your feet, hands off the brake, and just let it go." We have a good time, It's no.
Well, so in that case, though, I think the best thing you can do as a leader, if the person isn't feeling incompetent or low capability, you still, as a leader, I think you have to do your diligence to explain why you're going to be providing it. Like, this is dangerous or in high stress.
That's right.
If you make a mistake,
the stakes are high.
It's high risk situation. So whether you like it or not,
that's
how I perceive it. And I'm going to be providing you some directive support. And as long as you've established that, they may not like it still, but you've done what you need to do.
That's great, though, because as a leader, you to give them, like, to tell them where you are in the process is super important, so they understand where you're coming from. You're right. They might
context.
They may not agree with it, but they'll respect it if they know that, hey, we're in a high stakes.
Yes.
Hopefully. Yes. No,
and so it's, let me give you one. It's always, what's the first problem you have with a child that's just learned to walk?
They want to do it all by themselves.
That's not only that. What do they want to do? They want to go wherever they want to go, and if they're over there by the stove, and the stove is on, and so I would say, "Oh no, you can walk. Go for it. Go for it, kid." No, it's no, Drea. I don't want you to. I want to show you how hot this is. Mm-hmm. So giving them a familiar explaining the risks that are involved in it and familiarizing them with the possible consequences that will, and they're protected when they examine the consequences.
Yes, like a sneak peek to the consequences, and so they don't actually get to realize them to the fullest extent, I guess.
Yeah. So what we're talking about now is a person who has very little skill, and usually because they're enthusiastic about it, they don't want to be told too much, and so there's nothing worse than having an executive in a brand new job who you think you hired and hired for this purpose, but they don't. Let's say a brand new sales vice president who doesn't know the product, but knows the selling process, and thinks that's the all and be in all of it. There's so many different things, and so oftentimes higher up executives never get the structure they need. They don't get the structure, and they become belligerent about the fact that somebody might want to try to get
It doesn't even need to be higher up. I think of like those first line supervisors, like they've been working and doing a really good job, and now they're promoted to be a supervisor, but yet they've never had any training or skill.
Oh, right, to be a trainer.
How to
work with
how to be a
others.
supervisor. Exactly. And they've like, well, their confidence is way high because they've just done a really good job. They just got promoted, and then you try and give them instruction on how to lead others, and hopefully they take it, but sometimes they don't, and it goes south pretty quickly.
Really, a manager who's been I had a one-time manager who was one of the finest maintenance men I've ever encountered. Really knew all the machines that he was working on, and he just loved it. He just made those machines sing, and guess what? We hired so many people that we had to have a what?
Supervisor.
Yeah, and so who will we get to be a supervisor?
The guy that's been killing it.
The guy's been building. Yeah. So we put him in that situation, and he was a miserable failure. He'd just say, "Get out of the way. I'll fix this for you."
Yeah,
And the next thing you know,
That's
he's
it.
fixing everybody's machines, and he doesn't have any time, and he doesn't pass any expertise on to them, and it's an ego trip for him to just stand in front of a machine and do this and do that and
Little bit of empowerment.
You can keep leaning back,
Thank you very much.
but I don't want you to
Fade.
lose the.
I'm fading. So, okay, so
So I guess the point I was trying to make there is it can happen at any level in the organization.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's
Oh, yeah. So it's up to leaders to understand that you don't put up with leaders who are incompetent. It's worse to have an incompetent manager than it is an incompetent direct report.
But it also doesn't mean you just get rid of them either.
No.
You should be able
No, it's a
to work
little
with
bit,
them, but
yeah.
I don't. But speaking of hiring, there's very different situations. You think of hiring an executive, you have to accept that there's certain things that they're just not going to know. But in terms of the skills to do their job, like you said, if you hire a chief sales officer, or what would it be, like a chief growth officer or something, you would expect them to be a subject matter expert in the process of how to sell, but they may not know your product.
Bingo.
That identifies another aspect of what we're talking about in leadership, is that it's not the person that's at a certain level. It's specific to a task or a goal.
You are absolutely right. Thank you for both of those comments.
But that comes into hiring too, is how much time do I have to provide directive support? Directive support either high directive or high supportive takes a lot of time. And so you have to be able to gauge how much time do I have to be able to do that, or make sure you understand that that's just inevitable. Anyone you bring on, no one's going to be an expert in your product, most likely. You have to be able to set the time aside, which that's something I see a lot, especially in the government, is supervisory roles in a lot of the departments over in the command where I work is a tertiary job. It's a 10% role. And so how could you expect anyone to grow and develop well if their supervisor, who's supposed to be providing all the support, is actually 90% of the time doing another job, and they only have 10% to support 20 people that report to them? There's just...
And the interesting thing about that is we've got people managing other people who can't do the job that they want that other person to do.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, that too. You can't provide very good directive support if you don't know how to do the job.
So let's tug at this issue of competence for just a minute. There's two types of have types of information to be competent. One is what I would call task knowledge, and the second, which is transferable skills. Mm-hmm. So an example might be, we might have a really fine athlete who can run, jump, and things like that, but he can't hit. Michael, think of Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Goes over to the minor leagues of baseball when he took a break from the Chicago Bulls, And what his problem was not that he wasn't out of shape, not that he didn't have certain strengths. He did not hit a baseball.
Yes, his skills in basketball didn't transfer over to baseball, even though he'd been playing baseball for a long time. But you're right, they didn't completely transfer over. So
you got it. So transferable knowledge then is knowledge that can be cut across several different jobs you could use. Well, task knowledge, specific task knowledge, is what is it you have to do to be able to do the job. So he might be able to run. He might, but the question is, can he hit a baseball?
Yeah, I was going to say in that case, his transferable skills were there. He had the athleticism, he had the endurance.
Yeah.
He could jump, he could run, but the specific technique of how to swing a bat, that's the task piece. So he had the transferable skills.
Not the task.
He didn't have the task.
And remember, there's a different skill to hit a baseball than it is to catch one or to throw one. So he's not a pitcher, and he doesn't have the task knowledge to be a good pitcher. But he might have a really good capacity to do some other things that are generally related to the outcome you want. So hitting, what were the major things in baseball would be hitting, it'd be
fielding,
catching, fielding, and the general knowledge of the game itself, and it's where you're supposed to be at a certain particular point.
So from an organizational perspective, I think of a good example is using a database system, right?
Yeah. So, now you get it.
We recently hired somebody to help manage our learning management system. Well, the chance of finding someone that had used the specific learning management system that we purchased, in fact, out of whatever 30 or 50 applicants, not a single one of them had experience with that particular software, but a lot of them had used other databases or other even learning management systems. So they had those transferable skills. But when it came into it, it's like, okay, you've used databases before. You understand the concept of permissions or groups or users and administration, but you don't know the process for how you do it in this system. Click here, click here, click here. The buttons are on the right or on the left or
demonstrate, try it. Yeah,
right.
You got it.
So there's
So there's two types of, if you will, knowledge necessary to be successful in a given outcome. But remember, the given outcome is different if you're hitting than you're throwing or fielding. It's important for people to say that goals would be set depending upon the range of possible. So let's go back to batting average. If Michael when he got into the league, his batting average was no higher. He wasn't hitting more than the Mendoza line, which is less than 200, and so I think he got a bit discouraged, and he had to really spend time doing things that he had to make up, which he never had when it was there. So we make decisions, leaders should be making decisions on the basis of task knowledge and transferable skills and the standards that are set for those things, because you don't set the same standards for a rookie that you set the same for another who's been in the system, okay? Context is important. It's important because it requires different leader behaviors in whatever that context is. You don't lead one person like you might lead a team. And everybody knows it, makes sense. It's qualitatively a good idea to realize that teams are not the same as a one-to-one. And that the one-to-one or any outcomes that you want are going to be indigenous to the people trying to do it in relation to their ability and their energy to do it. So we haven't not talked about energy yet, and we will do that. But you want to make sure that competence is at the base of and at the base of the types of behaviors you use, the type of directive behaviors that you use. There'll be times when you won't use directive behaviors, but in the what we're calling the rookie stage, rookies need a lot of direction. Rookies need a lot of focusing behaviors.
Right, and that's kind of I think where we spent most of the time today was in the first two phases.
Yeah.
Well, really the first phase, because in the second phase, that's when you start getting discouraged. Your energy goes down, and you need that.
Where does that go from here?
Supportive piece, which I guess we can talk about in the next podcast.
Yeah. Right. So, what's your joke, Aaron? You got one?
Oh man.
Oh no! Look at me.
I didn't think of one.
All right.
Okay. All right.
You got one.
You got one. You got one.
He made me think of one.
All right.
Did you know that they discovered some brand new dinosaur bones in Denver, outside of Denver? Yeah,
Recently,
yeah. And they've never seen them. They've never seen them. And so they got a bunch of paleontologists to kind of look at it, and they realize that it's a brand new animal, and they have to name it.
Okay.
And the other thing they found out, it was a little bit nearsighted. They didn't have really good eyesight. So don't ask me how they'd established that.
From bones, right?
I don't know. These guys are really good, but so what should we?
What did they call it?
Yeah, well they decided to call it. I didn't think he saw us.
Man, you dragged that one on pretty
Yeah,
good.
I thought we were going to run into a moth for a second.
I didn't think he saw us, Nikki. Oh, jeez. I can't believe I did that.
All
right. Thanks, everyone. We'll be back for more one-to-one context. Congrats! You made it to the end of the episode. Thanks for tuning in. We genuinely hope that you found value in our conversation. If you liked it, please click that like button below and subscribe so that you can stay up to date on our current episodes. And if you didn't like it, you can click the dislike button, but make sure you click it twice. We're eager to hear from you, whether it's your thoughts, questions, topic ideas, or if you're interested in our leadership training and consulting support. Leave us a comment below or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. We're open to any and all feedback. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to having you back for more insightful leadership discussion. Until next time.